Hi, folks.
Morning.
Just remember, they can't see you unless you're further out.
Yeah, I know. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and get started. I was scolded for not passing around the sign-up sheet last week, so I lost of time. Good 10 seconds creating a sign-up sheet. So if you could pass it on down, that'd be fantastic. For those of you at home, I've got the quick insight report that we're going to be reviewing today.
Do we have access to that electronically?
It should be on the church website,
Okay.
as well as you should have been emailed it, but I've been told by a bunch of people that they didn't get it. So I printed it out for those here today. Didn't think about you guys at home. Sorry.
That's okay. Thanks.
All right. Who needs a quick insight report?
And I have an extra one here if anyone needs it.
Okay. Oh, that's the summary from last week.
Oh, okay, great.
All right. Anyone need? So today is less about Rawley talking and more about you guys talking. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Christy, won't you just come up here and lead and I'll sit down? Okay, so, you know what? What would be good is I'll give a quick review of what we did last week. How many of you were here last week? Okay, most of you. All right. Were you folks here last week? No. George? George was? Faith? Yeah, okay. So I won't go through this information, but last week we went through two different summaries of the information as a whole. And then this week, we've got the full quick insight report. And for those that will remember, online, there are 3 insight reports, 2 in your category, right?
Religion and ministry.
Religion and ministry, and then I think there were 4 in Gary's area, right?
There's an infinite kind of number in there, but there's about
Yeah.
4 or 5 each one.
Right. So we're just focusing on the general demographics this week. And then a month from now, Bob will take over with the religion and ministry. Okay. So as a reminder, all of this data is the 2.5 mile mission field that we'll be focusing on. And then Bob, you had some answers to questions from last week, right?
And just on that 2.5 mile radius, there's nothing magic about that. The reason I picked that is it sort of bordered our neighbor churches. Like if you're looking at Downtown or Westchester, it's that area in between all of that is 2.5 mile radius. And from last week, Glenn had asked the question, how do they define white collar? Because that became a point that came up to one time. They break down jobs into 12 categories. They further define the civilian population, in other words, it's non-military, to be 16 years of age or older. The white collar is typically professional, managerial, sales, administrative support. Blue collar is typically labor intensive in either the production or service sector. And then you have a question as to where the data sources were. This will scare you a little bit because this is what they know about you. So this is what there's an outfit called SI, which is Synergist Technologies Inc. They mine the data for MissionInsite. They have the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, Center for Disease Control, Department of Defense, Federal Aviation Administration, Federal Financial Institution Examination, Federal Housing Finance Agency data, Integrated Post-Secondary Data Education System, Internal Revenue Service, National Center for Education Statistics, National Center for Health Statistics, National Park Services. I have a little trouble seeing how that's good. Social Security, U.S. Census Bureau, and U.S. Postal Service. That's just the SPI data that gets collected. Then there's American Community Survey data. There's Experian, who we mostly know about our credit and so forth like that. But they provide market services that provide a 360-degree view of consumer choices, preferences, and habits. Then there's the Quadrant, which is the national survey of religious preferences, practices, and beliefs. And then Epsilon, which is the connection between people and brands by household. So there is a ton of data that goes into this.
In other words, Big Brother is watching.
You have no idea how much they know about it.
Well, every time for a shopper card.
Or just request something, to look at on the internet.
Can you hear us?
It's called Lay.
Little bit.
We can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you clearly. So this is going to be group led this week. So I'm going to do my best to make sure that you guys can hear. If there's an issue, let me know.
Because they hear Bob.
Could you hear Bob okay? Yeah, okay. We're getting the yes. All right. All right. So what to do now?
Well, there weren't many in church.
What's that? Okay, so if you turn to page 1, I guess, page 2, excuse me, you'll see this right here. This is a summary of what's within the main report. So there, if you remember, there are 3 reports in the demographic study. You have the quick report, you have the executive report, and then you have the full report. So if you have questions on any of these things that we're about ready to cover, feel free to dive into the full report. We just didn't think there was enough time to give the full report justice, between services. So starting off, the expectations is that in the future, how is this area population expected to change? And we kind of mentioned that last week on the 5-year run. It's very little change as far as number of people that live in the area. Now, I'm not sure, and Bob, you're much more familiar with this than I am. Is this taking in consideration the influx of apartments being built in the area, do you recall?
As far as the data goes, whenever they took the snapshot, which was not, it should have been within the last 6 months or so, they update biannually. So the data should be current as far as that goes, but I'm sure they haven't captured like all the building that's going on in the area, because a lot of that hasn't been completed yet.
All right, school age change. This was interesting to me, that we have a moderate decline in our school age children over the next 10 years.
Is that school age elementary or all through high, like elementary through high?
So let's see, population, it doesn't specifically say here. Once again, in the full report, I'll give you the details. If memory serves, I believe it's K through 12. Families with children are expected to grow. So apparently they're just bringing in 25-year-olds.
Well, that's what those apartments are apparently marketed for.
A lot with that.
And children who are in school.
Right.
Actually, I guess if you read number, that says more or less likely to live in two-parent households.
Ah, fair enough.
So, and there it says somewhat more, so it's not necessarily a trend as much as a comparison to.
Well, the green is the trend.
Oh, I'm reading what the green says, it says somewhat more as compared to a trend, so that's what I'm thinking.
Fair enough.
Okay, fair enough to other areas with, two households.
I believe the color coding is against the state, and we're expected that to be somewhat more, and then which is above the trend in the state. Adult educational attainment is very high. Community diversity index, we're very homogeneous here. We kind of covered that last week. Our median family income is expected to be significantly greater than the state. Our poverty level is significantly less. Our blue to white collar occupations are going to be somewhat white. And largest racial/ethnic group, and we covered this last week, is the white, non-Hispanic. So what comments do we have about those 9 topics?
Doesn't appear that be in that field that they're going to be the people that are coming to us for significant help or assistance that we see now.
Well, I'll just challenge that a little. I'm going to call almost a senior center type things would be good, where people would get to meet, do things, play bridge, whatever that sort of would do. It would deal with the older generation. So there are some things like that where they have needs, they're just not financial needs.
Yeah, I guess, yes, to your point, I guess what I would be assistance in a different way than what we're seeing now.
But it's still, and again, I'll go back to what I mentioned last week, which is sort of interesting. It's like 2 parts. One of which, this is our community. This would be who would attend Grove Church if they chose to attend Grove Church. What they would do as a church community could be solving homelessness in this area. So their outlook and their outreach could be totally different than their needs as a congregation.
So it could be, it could be solving homelessness in Japan, for all we know.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if that's what, if that turned out to be what these people wanted to do, that's what we were. I got you. Right.
And they're usually very generous with their money, so that leads to the ability to do a lot of that.
And that's whatever we find that group finds.
Right.
Right, so digging in further. You've got we're moving on to page 3 with the bar charts. So the population, as we indicated, is not expected to grow significantly. But if you look at the chart there, it kind of adds some framework to that. Really don't know how to add any more comments to that thing. Just here's the chart.
Yeah, but the family stay the same.
Yeah, everything stays pretty much the way it is now, just a little increase in each bar.
Yeah.
Well, does that take into, I don't know, there was so much building around here.
Right. And so this
They're
information.
not done, so I'm not sure I believe this chart.
I think what they probably do, and I couldn't answer this for sure, is that they look at the trend up till now are a little lower, they wouldn't be able to.
Well, at some point, we're gonna run out. They don't build land like they used to, so at some point, they're gonna run out.
Well, that's when we start knocking things down and rebuilding,
Exactly.
And repurposing.
Yeah. So maybe
AKA the Exton Mall is gonna, you know, have a,
that's true.
Gonna have water. A future, a different
it-
future.
it's a different future. It's kind of up in the air what that will be. There's a couple of different groups. My understanding is the mall is in bankruptcy right now. And, they have to go through a period of time to give the current owners an opportunity to correct that. And then once that passes, another group has already put in a bid to buy it.
And it was resold.
So I don't think it has been sold, or the bid I think it's sold contingent that Crete doesn't doesn't honor their back commitment. There's something there legally, but you're right,
It hasn't gone to settlement.
correct.
And there's still the whole part about like Boscov's, owning their, Boscov owns their, physical building, yeah, they are owners of that. So it doesn't like necessarily, so there's, it's
Complicated.
It is very complicated, because I think Macy's owns theirs and Sears owns theirs.
Yeah, they were the anchor stores.
Yeah.
Okay, but I mean, this change means too that people, you know, when they grow up, that there's a certain percentage of people that are moving away.
Yeah.
You know, and quite frankly, in 2031, there's
no more family. I'm thinking that might have been.
Families are gone.
I'm thinking they might still be there.
I think they have to go on.
I think, Bob, too, that to your point about the 2.5 miles, when I think about some of the building that's going on, like they're building up by the turnpike, that's not captured. Buildings down. That's not captured. It's not going to be mile. But it's actually within the 2.5 miles, there is some of that building.
It's all of the extra,
Good morning.
that you're seeing, anything between here and downtown and here and
So I
202.
think building going
No.
on.
Actually, I woke up on my own literally 4 minutes before 9, and I just sort of like turned on the service so I could listen to it. I have enough for a while.
They're building next, but they have.
I totally needed to sleep in. Whew.
Maybe.
I'm sure you do. I'm sorry you.
You're in the field though, right?
Yeah, that's in the field.
Yeah.
I can walk to that place.
No, you-
A good many of them don't live in Chapel.
Oh, yeah, like,
we're not.
yeah.
All right. Did we solve the problem with the families?
Families.
Everybody's gonna disband their families in 2031.
It's hard to predict how many people are gonna form a family in the next 2 years, so they just stop.
Okay.
They're not gonna count.
Millennials aren't having kids.
All right. So, I kind of highlighted where we are today in that next graph at the bottom of page 3 in 2021. So in our field, we have 27,030 people, which kind of surprised me when I first saw that data, because I didn't expect that we would have had that many people in 2.5 months.
And it's like 10,200 households.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you have apartments, you're gonna have a lot.
Yeah, but I mean, there are a lot more apartments than what used to be. But
Yeah.
the bulk of these people are not apartment people.
Oh, okay.
And then, you know, there's some more data behind that as to, you know, what the changes are going to be. The population change is 3.7%. The households 3.9. But the family households is 5.1. All right, turning to page 4, let's go over that.
That means it takes 2 incomes to buy.
Yes,
Yeah.
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 Well, I've seen people with 2 incomes just not have that much furniture, you know. so
Yeah,
just
yeah,
paying
yeah.
for the whatever, the mortgage or whatever.
Well, everything's very expensive comparatively speaking, too.
Mhm.
You know, Denise and I just bought some furniture, and I had a heart attack when they gave me the bill. And it wasn't that, yeah, that's the word I'm looking for, yeah.
And I think two things too, what they call the poverty levels based on the federal definition of poverty level. Living in Chester County, you have to have twice that when you're still in poverty level. I mean, the cost of living in Chester County.
Yeah, and just because someone's not in the poverty level doesn't mean they're not struggling for the reasons that we
Right,
just said.
right,
You know, essentially, most families have to have 2 incomes, and then you've got childcare, and it's yeah. Now it's been 2 decades, but when Denise and I went through it, you know, we had to come up with less money for one of us to not work than work and pay for childcare.
Yeah, in the summertime, because there was more childcare, my provider maybe took home a little more than I did.
Yeah.
Office campus.
Yeah. I don't think it was allowed.
Well, that's the thing too, that it's probably going to make a difference here that hasn't ironed itself out yet too, is with both working parents, working from home has allowed for some of the childcare and stuff like that. There'll probably be a greater need for childcare, and as those that have been staying at home drift back into the office, there's going to be a greater need for
Or
childcare.
required to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see that with my former coworkers, some requirements and, you know, they're working around them sometimes, but after working successfully, from home for 2 years, and like, well, really, why did this?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't work because we have these leases on some really expensive, beautiful real estate that we want you to occupy.
Exactly. We have friends that their employer, the husband and wife both work for the same employer, and they took the opportunity. You know what? Let's just get rid of our offices, and that's great. My employer, just prior to the pandemic, it spent $150 million on a new office building.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, they're not going to let that go.
Yes, I get.
I've just been reading some internet stuff about Elon Musk, who apparently going to force his employees to go back into the office. Now, if he buys Twitter, I'm sure most of those people work from home.
Yeah.
So if they enforce the same rules, there'll be a lot of people back from home.
All right, moving on. We've got the population change graph there. I don't completely understand this graph, Bob. I never have, and I've been meaning to talk to you about it. Page 4 at the top. It's talking about 2000 and 2010, we're at 10 to 14%.
The note below that sort of gives a little bit, the traditional married couple structure is evolving into many different family structures.
Yeah, but that's for the bar graph below.
So population is one.
Oh,
and then
you know what?
household history is the other.
So, okay, I understand this now. It just hit me.
Yeah.
So this is the trend from 2000 to 2010, the red and blue line. So back then, the change was, you know, roughly 10 to 12%, whatever that is. And then it kind of sloped down and then bounced back up to 2031. The trend is going to be about the 3% that we had talked about previously. So it's 4 points in history that, well, 2 points in history, 2 points in the future that they're looking at the trend change.
And they're looking at the trend going back up slightly, which could be some of the growth being captured in the area.
All right, and then family households with children type. We touched on this last week as well. You know, the bulk of the people that surround the church here are married. Single mother households and single father households, those are captured down there. The red being us, the blue being the state. Anything to comment there, folks? All right.
I wonder if maybe some of the trend toward more married couples is because of the price of houses.
Oh, very well. could be,
Where
yeah.
where we're located.
Where we're
Yeah.
If I was a single mom, I would not choose.
Within 2.5 miles of the church here.
Unless I could rent something in Indian King, maybe that's about the only possible affordable housing, but I'm not sure. I knew some single parents.
There's an interesting trend going on too, that corporations are now buying houses. Like you get 7 of them a week, you know, we want to buy your house, got deals, and all that. And then they're turning around and renting them.
Mhm.
So the rental business for large corporate structures is how things are moving, because people can't afford to buy a house.
They can't afford, they can't qualify for a mortgage, they might be able to pay the same amount of rent that a mortgage might be. Yeah, so the corporation's doing well.
And the corporations see that as a good moneymaker, because once they've got you in that system, you're stuck there. You're going to be renting because you won't be able to.
Because you're having trouble coming there.
Another trend you see, Good Morning America, I think, had it on, is single moms getting together with other single moms and renting, like renting a room and sharing the kitchen and bathroom or whatever. So you've got, say, 3 single moms in a dwelling.
So just more non-traditional.
Yeah.
Living.
You see, people have to adapt in order to survive, so that's sort of like what he's going.
And then you have the elderly living with their children.
Mhm.
That's quite, becoming quite common.
Yeah, with help, I mean, yeah, the children living with their parents.
Yeah, we know that one.
Look at it, looking at it from another angle, yeah.
Well, our children have told us that they aren't moving out, we are. So, you know, if that helps talk about it, then.
I know someone who said, well, when you guys are done with this house, you think I could have it? Well, probably.
Oh, my God.
Older than you.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I did some work for a former employer. This was about 8 years ago, I guess. And my job at that time was to find a 1-bedroom apartment, and this would have been on the south side of Webster, so not really in this field, but I imagine it hasn't gotten any better and the prices are about the same. But the least expensive 1-bedroom apartment I could find was $1,625 a month. And so I have to imagine that with all these new apartments around here, it's got to be close to 2,000 today.
I think you have to even up that.
Really?
In Westchester, we're close to 3,000.
Closer to 3,000? Okay.
Well, I'm hanging on to my ramshackle house.
Yeah.
You can't beat a mortgage.
Cheaper to
for a
keep her.
while. Yeah.
Well, and then when you start talking about like these last Section 8 houses in this area, Section 8 housing.
Mm-hmm.
Subsidized housing, subsidized housing. So like right now, there are still people in hotels from Hurricane
Okay.
Ida
Oh, yeah.
because-
Oh.
because there's nowhere for them to go.
I didn't mean to turn your on switch on,
Yeah,
sorry.
sorry.
And, the wealthy white population and to not want section housing in their backyard.
The county has tried to work some arrangements with builders coming in, that in order to build this horrendous complex you want to put in, you must provide so much section 8 housing. They've had very little success. The lawyers just tie it all up.
Yeah, I'm sure of that.
All right, let's move on to page 5. Talks a little bit about the population history here, as you know, 2 years in the past, 2 years in the future, or 2 points in the past, 2 points in the future. 2010, the average age was 35.
Yeah.
And now we're moving up to 42 by 2031.
Which is simply the fact that, like,
Those people are growing older.
yeah, and people aren't, and we're not having, like, younger.
Which I think goes back to our last conversation about the housing, right?
And the affordability or lack thereof.
Yeah.
Correct.
Kids
Yeah.
are moving out of there.
Well, that, and I think people are having less children. You know,
Yeah.
you look at 1 to 5, and now people are having 2 children.
Well, they're expensive.
Yeah.
Only when you're buying sheets.
No, we lucked out in a lot of that. Our oldest loves to shop at thrift stores and Goodwill and things like that. My youngest loves to shop at whatever name brand is here. So we've said to him, yes, you can have all those things. Pay for them yourself, and he does. So
Oh, that's good.
yeah. All right. Well, we've kind of talked about the children graph. And the phase of life, the 10-year change, phases will increase or decrease as a percentage of the total population forecasted in the future. So if you take a look at this graph, you got each age group down at the bottom, and then how that age group is going to change over 10 years. So the largest increase is that group of 65 and older.
But there is also an increase in that 25 to 34.
There is, and my
They're the ones
guess is,
moving into these apartments.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. That's. So I think this is proof, I guess, to your point, are they capturing the people moving in? And to your point over there, Steve, that most of the growth yet to happen or is in process is maybe outside the 2.5 mile field, right? Because after Steve mentioned that, I started thinking about it. All the apartments and housing that I know of are completed, right? I mean, you've got the 500 home community. I think they would fit into this. And that's a work in progress, but that trend would have been captured, and same with the apartment trends being captured. So I will say to you, without knowing, for certain, that yeah, they've captured that.
It's whatever was on the books, and those were started a few years back, so they probably had local use.
And then we move into a phase of life, the actual percent changes by year down below. We'll move on to page 6. Education. So what level of education, and already indicated previously, but the largest in our study area are people with bachelor's degree, followed by people with graduate and professional degrees.
They were all qualified.
Wow, I'm gonna guess maybe the older population. I didn't know that less than ninth grade was an option.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, maybe when we were a little older.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But you know what? That's expected to grow by 2 in the next 5 years.
Mm. Or wasn't it, you know.
All right, so then we got the breakdown by, number below that. Moving on to page 7. Now you got the ethnic percentage. So the Asian, I could look at my summary, I don't remember specifically the percentage, but the Asian in this area is predominantly Indian, yeah. There was another word they used for it, but that was pretty much it.
Indian subcontinent.
Maybe that's what it was, subcontinent of India. But interesting to actually see, the pie chart of the breakout.
But I guess I would just reiterate the fact that it doesn't look like our congregation.
Yeah.
Well, I think we got the 80.3% covered.
We're beyond that.
I think on this chart, though, whether you think about growth or not, I mean, like the age is growing from effectively 9% or 10% in 2021. Really no growth there, but even 9% in 2010 up to 10.5. That's not a large number. I mean, it might be a growth trend, but when you think about the white being dropping to 80, that's still 80 out of 100. Trend for a group small, the trend like this big, but overall, there's a white number there, it's just not dominant for a long time.
I guess it just represents the fact that the white number is the shrinking number and the black Asian is.
Right, but if we're thinking about who we want to be appealing to, if we got a group of 100 people, and 79 or 80 of them are white, and 83 of them are white, there's still a huge number of white there. So if you've added 2 out of 100, so maybe 1 or 2 out of that's one of the other ones, but still predominantly, really still looking predominantly.
Yeah. But I guess if you're looking at the congregation, 10% or 10 out of 100 is the Asian. You don't see that.
Right, yeah. And see, Gary and I were talking about that. What is our regular attendance, like 224? Was that?
Somewhere around 225.
Oh, yeah, okay, so we'll just say 225. So if 10% of our community, and we're looking to reflect the community, do we have 22, 23 Asian people here?
But as that population grows, it also may mean that the resources for those populations is grown, i.e. the churches to address that population is growing, and that's where they're going. Because people are going where there's like, there's Chinese churches, there's Indian churches, so it doesn't.
No, it doesn't mean we're necessarily doing anything wrong, so to speak, right? Or that we have to match that
It
number.
doesn't mean that we should expect that we are going to reflect, this type of diversity, because there may be something offered there that more fits what they're looking for.
Let me offer this, if we were to change going forward, and I'm not saying this is what's wrong or different, but a lot of times you see a second heading out there on that sign, and it would be maybe an Asian church would have a service of birth.
Right.
You see a lot of churches sharing their facilities with the Korean church and so forth like that.
It's
But
just food for thought.
you just said, right, sharing it, which still means separate.
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
And then so I see that as different than kind of an integrated,
I
an
would say
integrated single
from what I
conversation.
understand from like, like Westchester United Methodist that shares their space with a Hispanic service. I don't think that they lend
Right.
for their other activities. I do think that they use the space and they definitely, there's communication, but I don't, and I could be,
Now, some of the stuff I'm reading is talking about blending two of them together. In other words, they talk about the administrative part of that can be a little tricky, watch out for this, that, and other thing. The other part of it is where they do try and do the integration. It usually isn't with the service because there's enough differences in the service. Maybe it's the language or maybe it's the traditions or anything like that, culture. But what they do try and do is on activities and stuff like that, they do try and get across, population of, they support each other in activities. And even if you look at the preschool at Grove reflects the community. They're better than 10% Asian in the preschool.
Right, because they're providing a resource that those churches can't.
Right. And that's
Yeah.
what our key.
If they were, I would bet you that, let's say, whatever the population, the Indian population is in preschool. I'm betting you if there was an Indian preschool option, you would see that decline here.
well, I think also,
That would
though,
be their first
yeah,
choice, because that would
think,
be their first.
yeah. But additionally, though, we traditionally have not pulled, regardless of race, we have not
Right,
pulled
correct.
from
Family,
the
from
preschool, no.
Right.
And again, this goes back, this is our community. How do we want to relate to it?
Right.
And this is just demographic data, stuff that Bob's gonna go over and stuff that Gary's gonna go over, is gonna talk about what you just brought up, their trend.
My point is that, we shouldn't think that because our population here does not exactly reflect the diversity here, that that's a bad thing.
No.
Or that we want to make it reflect that just to say that we have, you know what I mean? Like, make sure that we're looking and to do the right thing for the right reason.
Right, and it,
Not the affirmative action
I
conversation.
just don't want to see a lot of effort put towards something that may not be needed.
right.
Well, you're saying there might be an Indian church somewhere saying, how can we get some white people to come here?
I don't know.
One Sunday a month, we go to that.
And this doesn't take into consideration their religious preference. Okay, this is just demographic. This is not necessarily the people we need to go after. Yes, we have been using that as an illustration point, but that's not what this group is about.
No, but in a lot of the studies that we've been doing, that's what we're talking about. The emphasis seems to be on, well, our congregation and our people here don't reflect what, the
Sure.
diversity out there. And there just seems to be a lot of emphasis put on that. And I'm thinking, well, that's implying that's a bad thing,
Right.
but it may not be.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just,
It's just that from a trend standpoint, if you look at our congregation here and it's slowly doing this, we need to replenish
Yeah.
the community somehow. So how do we relate to the community? That's our best resource, kind of thing.
right.
I look at it as food for thought.
And this will all be like, when we get to the vision weekend thing, this is where hopefully everybody will have these kinds of things floating around their mind, so that a good vision can be put together.
In all honesty, this data is, but you have to look at all three components that we'll be going over in the next couple of months to completely understand what's going on and what those trends are. This is just the demographic makeup. To me, what we really need to focus on for our future, and I haven't dug deep in that data, is what are the religious trends of the area, and who are we, and how does that all relate? So, moving on, we only have about 5 more minutes. See if I can hit anything here that, okay, here you go. Here's a touch of the mosaic. Is that what you're chuckling at?
I don't think
That's what I was
I
trying
took any of them.
I need to, anybody know any single American royalty? Asking for friends.
So, we'll just talk about the mosaic here and then we'll call it a day. But there is, the names are funny, but there is an exact description, and feel free to go through the tapestry and mosaic data. And that's what Gary's going to cover in August. Okay. But when you read the description of each one of these groups, it does make sense. The names are a little kind of funny, but you know, these are,
They
They
also
are
very
descriptive.
successful.
Where's beer and burned out?
Yeah, I think that would be a good demographic to have in here.
That's my one too.
Beer and Burned Out.
Beer and burned out.
I think they did have
Well,
other.
These are the top 10.
Oh,
These
I got it right.
The top 10.
These are the top 10, and these are all the subsegments. There's
Oh.
bigger segments on top of it.
But it's interesting to note that of the top 4 or 5 are more than 50% of who's out.
And that is the power elite, booming with confidence,
Which could be retiring, so it's tough
Sure.
about philanthropic. Yeah. Yeah.
flourishing families, and then the top was power elite American royalty, and then the other one's power elite with kids and Cabernet.
Power lead to know. about
Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yes.
I guess you have to have wine when you have kids.
Then
I have
what is
drunk
it?
more after kids than before kids.
Well, Mama's helper, isn't that what it is?
I love couples with flowers.
So the
We need to get some couples with cloud in here.
yes. So Bob, do you want to tell everyone at a high level what you're going to go over next month and those dates?
Yeah, the dates are 17th and then the 24th, I guess. And basically, it'll be talking about in this community what the ministry interests are. And then the second piece of that is what the religious interests are. So it'll provide a breakdown on the percentages of, let's say, Catholic and so forth in the area. And it'll deal with some of the humanity too, in terms of what's the biggest concern for these people. And basically it breaks it down into 2 sections. One, the biggest concern for those that are church, or say they're part of a congregation, and the biggest concerns for those who are unchurched. So it kind of gives us, again, some more background kind of information to fill in with these demographics.
Yeah. And then Gary's you'll get an in-depth description of each one of these.
Let me just do a teaser for Gary's. This is American royalty. American royalty regard church membership as a social status. Religion is a good thing, and the church as an institution makes a valuable contribution to society. They enjoy privileges of membership and expect to shape policy and oversee personnel. However, they may be sporadic in church attendance, and they gladly connect with the church via web chat, and they generally prefer a larger church, but not necessarily a mega church. It will be a search of history or significant reputation, which is acknowledged as influential in the denomination or in public affairs. So this is their attitude about church. So it it gives you some of the mentality behind these groups. So it's just, again, more information about who you're talking to and how they relate. And there's a lot more information on these.
Yeah, there's 35 different categories. I forget how many.
There's quite a few. I think they only talk about your top 20.
Yeah. Okay. All right, anyone else have anything to add?
Thank you.
Thank you. And by the way, don't anyone watch the first service streaming? I made many errors.
For those of you who will be taking vacations and so forth, all these are being recorded so that you will be able to watch it other than.
Thank you very much, folks at home.
Thank you.
Yep.